In a shocking and groundbreaking report that blasts Johnson's behavior and suggests he be denied a pass to enter the parliamentary estate, a parliamentary committee found that the former British Prime Minister intentionally misled lawmakers about violations of his own COVID-19 lockdown rules. According to the committee's report, Johnson committed a serious contempt of Parliament when he claimed that rules were always followed after the so-called Partygate affair exposed unauthorized gatherings at Downing Street. The conclusions essentially amount to a historic reprimand of a former Prime Minister who, after winning an overwhelming electoral victory less than 4 years ago, had his political career crumble under the weight of a number of scandals. The Privileges Committee noted in its report, which was released on Thursday, the contempt was all the more serious because it was committed by the Prime Minister, the most senior member of the government. There has never before been a case where a Prime Minister was determined to have intentionally deceived the House. He misled the House on an issue of the greatest importance to the House and to the public, and did so repeatedly, the members said. They also claimed Johnson misled the committee when he offered evidence in his defense. Days before the report was to be released, Johnson abruptly resigned as an MP on Friday, overturning the committee's recommendation that he be punished long enough to call a by-election in his district. But in light of his resignation, the study added an additional, severe recommendation. Johnson should not be granted a former member's pass, a custom for former MPs. The probe by the committee, the majority of whom are from Johnson's Conservative Party, has come to a close. Johnson and some of his allies have criticized the committee as a kangaroo court. But the Partygate scandal might not be over. MPs must now vote to accept the report's conclusions, a potentially humiliating process that will undoubtedly highlight differences between Johnson's parliamentary allies and the current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who has recently tried to distance himself from Johnson. Johnson's actions during the COVID-19 pandemic, when he served as Prime Minister and was discovered by police to have broken his own guidelines, were the main subject of the investigation. This inquest examined whether Johnson intentionally misled legislators in the House of Commons when he informed them that he was unaware of the parties, as opposed to a police investigation and a separate parliamentary inquiry into the parties themselves. His conclusions were undisputed and unanimous. According to the study, it is highly unlikely that Mr. Johnson could have had a sincere belief that the rules or guidance were being followed at the time of his statements to the House. The report chastises Johnson for his criticisms of the committee's objectivity, and finds that his testimony and his resignation from the House of Commons both constituted several instances of contempt of Parliament. Johnson claimed that he was unaware that he was violating his lockdown policies during the incidents, but the committee rejected this claim. According to the committee's findings, Johnson's rhetoric was vitriolic and completely unacceptable, and it amounts to an attack on our democratic institutions because it targets a committee that is carrying out its mandate from the democratically elected House itself. If Johnson had continued serving in the legislature, the committee would have suggested a 90-day suspension from the Commons, which is 9 times the length of time that would require a sitting legislator to call a by-election to retake their seat. In his personal response to the report, Johnson referred to its release as a dreadful day for democracy. This is a fake report. I made a mistake by placing my faith in the committee's sincerity. The horrifying fact is that someone else has manipulated the truth to serve my agenda, he continued. The publishing has, however, further tarnished Johnson's reputation. His whole premiership was marred by scandal, ranging from financial issues to members of his team being accused of sexual misconduct. He was also the first PM to ever receive a fine from the police while in office. Near the end of his term in office, Johnson's support with the British public and his own MPs fell precipitously. After his replacement Liz Truss was forced to quit, he made an attempt to return, but it was unsuccessful as it became clear that a majority of Conservative MPs would oppose him. Analysis: Boris Johnson will make history, but not for any of the reasons he would like. With Sunak, his eventual successor and former Chancellor, Finance Minister, Johnson has been engaged in a verbal battle. He and 2 of his partners announced their intention to resign from the House of Representatives over the weekend, necessitating 3 challenging by-elections for a government that is now wallowing in the polls. Sunak, whom Johnson lambasted in his resignation statement, is not necessarily benefiting from the former Prime Minister's exit from the House of Commons. Johnson and his friends continue to hold Sunak primarily accountable for the political demise of his predecessor. Johnson has consistently had sway over Conservative voters, both inside and outside of Parliament. Johnson writing essays and giving speeches to the voters Sunak needs to win the next election outside of Parliament will undoubtedly increase tension in Downing Street.